Okay, today we're going to be working on a kind of a basic payroll application where we'll take in from a data file information about employees and we will write checks for them. Okay, so if you will go to the Google our classroom, you can find the data set. Oftentimes, you have to click on these three dots and open in a new window. And then you can just download it. It's just a short example data set, so it'll allow you to check things by hand. You may or may not recognize some of these names. So the studio that makes Dragon Ball Z has to pay their employees. So this is just a list of several of the characters, and we're going to be writing them checks based on their personalized checks based on their hours that they worked and their pay rate. So if you go ahead and download that, you can download it to your downloads folder or whatever particular folder you want. Okay. And then I'd like you to make a new project called PayrollZ. And we are going to get right to this. So we'll need to open up our folder explorer, okay? And if you can do that, please. And then I'll need you to navigate to where you created this project, okay? And so I've got this payroll.txt document right here. And I'm just simply going to drag it to the folder where I made the project. So I'll just, and you can also cut and paste, copy and paste, whatever you want to do. Or you could directly download it to that folder. And you'll see now I've got my package in the text document. We really want to take a second to look at this text document to make sure that we understand it. And typically we'd have a description, but I'll just tell you what it is. So the first item on each line of data will be the name of the employee. The second number will be a real number, and that real number will be the number of hours that the employee worked. Sorry, I apologize. It will be the hourly pay rate for the employee. They're being paid by the hour. So you can see this one is $8.95. The next number will be an integer number representing the number of hours. It'll be rounded to the nearest hour, the number of hours that they worked. And then the last number will be their tax withholding as a percent. So they'll be withholding 5.75% of their tax. Okay? And our goal is to print out the name of the employee, the number of hours that they worked, their pay rate, their their gross pay, rounded to the nearest cent, and then we'll print out their print out their net pay after we take away taxes. Okay? All right, let's write our class. And we're going to name this class, we'll call it Payroll. PayrollZ. Okay. We'll go ahead and get rid of all that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do some imports. We're going to import java.util.scanner because we're going to be scanning a file. We're going to import io.file. And because we have to check for this exception, we're also going to import file not found exception. All right, so we've got all of our imports now. And we'll say public class PayrollZ. And today I would like to get out of a static context. So let me show you how I do that. In order to be runnable, we have to have a public static void main string args. And I know we haven't worked a lot on making full applications by going to project and creating a jar to make it runnable. But the issue with that is we've all got to have the same updates of Java and all that stuff. So I'm just not doing that right now, but trust that this is important when you make runnable applications. For example, if I say, create jar file, it'll say you have to have the one that's called a main class. And that's because it has to have this file here. But I want to get out of a static context. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say I want to make a new instance of the class. And then we'll say app.run. Okay? So all this does is create an instance of this class. So you know that from BlueJ, that when you right click you can say new and then it comes down here. Well, that's doing it for us. It's saying new and going down there and then right clicking and saying run. So now we can say public void run. Okay? And it's very important to me that you understand the mechanics of what's happening here. So we're used to having to run method. Instance methods have to be run on an object, which appears down here. So if I say new PayrollZ, it goes there. Then I can say run. From the interactive shell, I would have to say PayrollZ, maybe like, I'll call it app2, equals new PayrollZ. Okay. Now I can say app2.run because it's an instance method. It has to be called on an instance of the class. Okay. Once I'm in this method here, I can call any other method that I want from within here without having to do anything special. I just say the name of the method. Okay. So it's nice to get us out of that context. Okay. All right, so I think that should, hopefully that makes sense. I'll just go ahead and remove that, and then I don't need this anymore. Okay. So our data set is going to have an unknown number of lines. So the first thing we're going to do is make a scanner, and we'll do a while loop that will scan until we are out of lines. So the way you make an object is you say the name of the type that we're going to make. We're going to declare a variable. Well, I'm going to have a file, and I'll just call it file with the lowercase f for the variable name, equals new file. And to load a file, I need to put in the name of the data set, which is payroll.txt. And there we go. Now I need to create a scanner. And I'll just call it lowercase scanner. So this is the type. That's the variable name I'm giving it. Is a new scanner. And I'm going to be scanning a file. Okay, so it's going to tell me that I have an unreported exception. So we have a choice. We can either catch it and try and handle it here, or we can throw it up the chain. So I'm just going to say throws file not found exception. Okay? So I know that's weird. We don't like putting stuff after the parentheses and before the curly brace. And because it's going to throw it up, we'll have to put it down here as well. But it's easier than having to deal with try catch right now. Later on, we would do that differently. Okay. All right. So now we don't get that error anymore. Okay. All right. So we're going to say we've got our scanner scanning the file. So we'll say while scanner, that's the name of my scanner, dot has next. So this is going to continue while there's more to scan. And now that we have this happening, what I want you to do is focus just on one line. You can get overwhelmed by trying to think about all of the data. You can think of you can pick your favorite person here and focus just on that one person, okay? And scanning them in, because it's automatically going to do, if you can get one line to scan correctly, the while loop will handle all the others. So I'm going to think just about this Goku person here, okay? Because I think that's one of the characters I know how to pronounce. All right, so the first item is going to be a string, a name. So I'm going to say string name. And that's going to be scanner dot next. Now, each of these names is only one word. If there were more than one word, we'd have to do some other stuff that I don't want to go over right now, but we'll get to it. So it's a single name. The next value is a decimal, or what we call a real number, right? A floating point. And this represents their hourly pay rate. So that's going to be of type double. So I'll say double rate. Well, we're going to have a couple rates. We'll have a tax rate as well. So let's call it pay rate. And we need to, if we say next, that'll be a problem because it'll try, you're going to see we're in an error. We're going to say java.lang.string cannot be converted to double. Okay? So there are a couple different ways we can do this. We could say double.parse double. What that does is it's a static method in the wrapper class double. It will take a string and convert it to a double. But the scanner class kind of has that built in. It actually does that exact code, but it just allows you to do it automatically, okay? By saying next double. The next value in the data set is the number of hours that they work, okay? Which in this case is 55. So we're going to say int hours scanner dot next int. Okay. The next value here is what's going to be their tax rate. So we'll say double tax rate. I'll just make it like that. And that'll be a double as well. All right, I want to be able to calculate their net pay, their gross pay. So I'll say double gross pay equals, let's just say get gross pay. Let's use a method. That's good coding, right? So to calculate the gross pay, what do we need? Well, we need to tell our gross pay. We need to tell it the pay rate. And we need to tell it the hours. Okay? Now we're going to get an error because we haven't written this, right? Well, let's go write it. Public, what are we returning? We're catching it in something called gross pay, but it's a double. So we'll be returning a double. Get gross pay. What are we taking in? What are we sending it? We're sending it a pay rate, and we're sending it in hours. So I'll say double pay rate and int hours. Is it okay for me to use the very same variable names here? Of course it is, because these variables were local. We're not declaring them up here. They're not instance variables. They're local variables. So I'm free to use that variable actually anywhere else, right? But I don't have to. I could say rate here and now an H. It's up to you. You can use anything you want here, but it makes sense since I'm sending it a variable called pay rate that I catch in a variable called pay rate. But this is a moment where I could change the name because whatever this is will go right there, and it doesn't matter what I call it. It's up to me. Okay, so let's think about how we can calculate gross pay. We're going to do this in some iterations because we're going to progress in our difficulty levels here, okay? So the first thing I want to do is simply calculate the pay rate. So I'll say return my pay rate times the hours. Okay. And let's print that out and test it. So I'm going to print line name for the name of the person. Then I'll put a colon. Then I'll put gross pay. Well, we should probably say that. Name, gross pay. Actually, I'm going to be really specific. I'm going to say name, then I'll put their name. Then I'll say gross pay. And then we'll put their gross pay. All right. Let's compile and try it out. So in order to do that, we just simply run that program. And this is what I get. Okay, so let's start with some of the issues here. First of all, the output is not very accurate here because, you see, the doubles are stored directly into our memory using binary. And so the value 0.01 for 1 cent cannot be stored very accurately. So we'll need to be doing some rounding. Okay? And we'll also want to format our print to be exactly 2 decimals so that it looks like money, so that we have like 0.50 instead of just 0.5 and 0.70, okay? Also, I think it's pointless to say name and then gross pay and then gross pay. Let's put some things in columns. But more than that, let's make the names in a nice column. The longest name we have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 letters. So I want to make it 8 letters for the first column. So let's do that. What we're going to use is what's called a printf. We could also use string.format. They work the same way, but if you're just going to print, we can use printf. So we're going to say system.out.printf. Printf stands for print with formatting. And the first thing I want to do is to have my column be for their name. Okay? So I'm going to say name. We're just going to make a column header. So name. And I want that to take up so many spaces. So I'm going to do 8 spaces total. So I can say name and then count over, well, name, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can do that. But since we're using %f, or printf, let's use that. We're going to say %8s. What that means is that I want to take up exactly 8 spaces. Then we're going to be putting the heading of gross pay. And I'm just going to say gross. And we'll take up exactly 5 spaces for that. So I'll say %5s. Now for each one of the s's that I put, I need to put a string. So my string will be the words name and gross. All right. Now we can just go down here and do a print line to move to the next step, but I just want to do a %in. That'll when inside a printf, %in moves you to a new line, just like a /n. And I'm actually going to move that right here so that it prints it right at the top before we start going through everything. Okay, now what I'm going to do is a print F here, and all I'm going to print is the values. So the first thing is a string, and it's supposed to take up 8 spaces. So we'll say %8s. The next is going to be a floating point number, but we want it to round to 2 decimal places, and I want it to have a $sign. So I'm going to say $sign. Then I'm going to say %.2f, and that will make it have round to 2 decimal places, and will force it to but I also want to make sure that it takes up the number of spaces we did before. Well, earlier we said 5, and I think that's enough, but we may have to change that. It might have to be 6. If somebody makes 6 would give you enough for 1, 2, 3. That's only going to give you enough for hundreds. Someone might make thousands of dollars. So let's do 6. So I need to change this back to a 6 as well. All right, there we go. And then we'll say, that's good. And then we're going to put in their name and their gross pay. And we'll compile. And then we'll run. Oh, you know what Wilshire forgot? He forgot to hit new line afterwards. We want it to go to a new line. You could just do this, system.out.println. Or you can put a % in, or I think even a slash in will work there as well. Try that again. Oh, that's much better. Okay, so there we have it. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's looking a lot better, but there's still some things I don't like. One of the things I don't like is that it's not left justified. I also don't like that we have this $sign not quite in the column, but that might be okay. So let's make names left justified. The way that we do that is simply put a negative sign. So by putting a negative sign, we're telling it that we want it to be left justified instead of right justified. And now it's starting to look a little better, isn't it? The gross, I kind of feel like that could move over one line. So we could do that by making our heading just 7. Oh yeah, that's looking good now. But I want to make when we make our next heading, we'll probably have to make sure that we count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're probably going to make that a 7 to account for the $sign. All right, so that's going pretty good. But we wanted to make sure that our payroll output also included a description of the number of hours that they worked and their pay rate. So let's make sure we do that. So we're going to go back to our heading. We're going to add some more stuff. So this was for our gross. So we're going to say, and we're also going to add in, I'll say negative. Now, the number of hours they work is never more than a 2-digit number, but we need to have space for the entire word hours. So hours is 5 letters long, so I'll just say %6 so that we have a space. So 6s. And again, we can also just use spaces and stuff like that, but we're practicing using formatters here. And so then I'm going to put hours there. Okay. And let's check that out. So we go back to our output statement. This first thing was their name. The next thing we're going to be putting is their hours, which is an int. Okay. So we'll say percent. Now, integers are D for decimal numbers base 10. Not decimal having a decimal point. They're still whole numbers, but they're base 10, not base 8 or base 16 or binary base 2. And we want it to take up, we said, 6 spaces. And let's take a look at that. Okay, not bad, but we need to make a decision. Do we like these numbers here, or would we prefer them to be left justified, maybe? So I think we will probably want to make them left justified. We also could, yeah, I think that would be better. Let's try that. So let's do a percent minus 6D. Yeah, that looks better, doesn't it? Might want to move this over one more space. So you can quite literally just say, right before you can just put a space. Okay. Or I'll just make the name take up 8 characters now. And there we go. Of course, that makes my gross not be quite right, but I can fix that by making, I'll take 1 off of this one. Actually, I'll add a minus, so I'll make gross left justified as well. Let's do that. Okay, so these are each now left justified. I think that's looking pretty good, right? Okay, the next thing that we wanted to add was we wanted to add their pay rate. So let's go back up to our string formatter here. The first percent was name. The second percent is hours. The next percent is gross. So before we do that, we're going to add another percent, this time for the pay rate. And it's going to be percent. And our pay rate is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 letters. So let's do minus 9 S. And we'll just put that right here. We'll just say pay rate. Pay rate. Okay. So now we've got a little bit more there. And we'll go down here and we'll put in their pay rate after the hours. And we'll add it here. So this was their total pay. We're going to do that again. First, I'll put a $sign. Then I'll put a percent point to F. But how many total spaces did I want it to take up? I want it to take up, this time I want it to take up 9, I think. And again, sometimes you have to play with this a little bit to get it just the way you write. So that 9 might need to come in 8 or something like that. Oh yeah, definitely. So that $sign, eek. We better left justify that. Let's go back and do that. So we'll do left justify. Oh yeah, that's better. That's better. Looks like I need to add one more space to pay rate though. So we'll do that. Pay rates right here. We'll make that 10. And there we have it. All right, if you're having trouble getting yours to format just right, this is what we have so far for formatting strings. Just make sure that it looks exactly like mine. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to need to do another calculation. We need to calculate their net pay. So net pay is what you take home after taxes. So we'll write a method to get net pay. And the net pay is going to take my gross pay and my tax rate. Actually, I'm sorry. I wanted us to print out how much was taken out by taxes. So let's just say get taxes. Yeah, let's just get, we just want to see what is taken out from taxes. So we're going to calculate how much to take out for taxes. Okay, it's giving me the error because I don't have that method written yet. This is going to return a double, get taxes, and it's going to take in a gross pay, and it's going to take in a tax rate. Now remember, our tax rate is actually written as a percent. Remember, like 5.75%. Well, we know that needs to be divided by 100 to make it 0.0575. So we're going to do that first. I'm going to call that. I'll just call it rate, and that's going to be tax rate divided by 100.0. Now, anytime, I could just say divide by 100 because this is a double, and anytime one of the two numbers is a double, it'll do proper division, not integer division. But just to make sure, I'm going to say that. Okay? It's always a good idea that anytime you want something to actually divide, like if you want 8 divided by 6 to be, 1.33 or whatever, 1.25, no, it's 1.33. Instead of just 1, you have to make sure that one of the numbers is a double. All right, so now we've got our tax rate. So the taxes is simply going to be the gross pay times that rate. So we'll return gross pay times that rate. Okay. And then we'll calculate our net pay by simply taking our gross pay minus our taxes. And then we're almost done. I'm going to go ahead and add a minus to this just to make everything left justified. Okay, so next I want a $sign. Oh, no, I don't. I want just a tax rate next, right? No, taxes, just taxes. So I do want a $sign. I do want percent F. We're going to want to round it to 2 decimal points. And I want it to take up, let's say 5 spaces. And then we'll put that right here on our list. So after gross pay, we're going to have our taxes. And I want that left justified. Okay? So you should add a $sign, percent negative 5.2F. Then we'll do one more. We'll say percent. So I'll say $sign, percent negative. And we'll do just like we did before, 6.2F. And that will be our net pay. All right. All right, I think we've got everything we need there. We need to put it in here. This one here is getting kind of complicated. I kind of feel like we could have just written it out and counted spaces. But I guess we'll continue with what we got. All right, so this next one we said was going to be 5 spaces, so I'll say percent negative 5s. And then the next one was supposed to be 6 spaces, so I'll say percent 6s. And we're going to add that. We're going to add tax, and we'll say net. Like I said, once it gets this complicated of a formatting, sometimes it's better, especially if all you're dealing with is strings, is to just type it in. So what I mean by that is we could just as easily have said something like system.out.println and been like name and then hours, pay rate. So we have that option to do that. The formatter does it for us, and that's kind of part of the lesson, so I wanted to practice it. All right, looks like everything's good. The percent %s here just makes a new line. We could add that here, but I wanted to show you could also just do that, depending on whatever you prefer. Let's compile, and let's run. All right. See what we think. Okay, so formatting is less than great. I think we need some more space on our gross tax, our gross and tax. So let's go back and add some more space. So the gross needs to be, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus a space. Let's do 8. So we need to find which one was gross. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's make that 8. Okay. And so then we got to come down here and match the same thing. That's this one here. So we'll do 8. We'll try them one at a time. Don't try and change too many of them at once. All right, that looks better. The tax rate is still not quite in the right position, so the word tax needs to move over 1. So this one here, this is actually going to be 9. The problem is that our accounts are just a little bit different because of the dollar signs. So that's okay. So we're going to make this we'll make that a 9. Okay. And then now that we've got that fixed, let's make the tax. We're going to make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's make it 7. So this one here is going to be a 7. And make this just a 6 because we also already have the dollar sign. And then that might do it, hopefully. Okay. All right. So we have a properly formatted output, I think. You know, if I was looking at things to change, I might take away one of the spaces here. Maybe one of the spaces in the middle. But I think I like it. There's whole things you can do about formatting, whole books on it. We're just kind of basically exploring it just a little bit. That's it for this lesson.